Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So we are at the parsha closest to the summer solstice. It isn't the longest parsha, but it is closest to the summer solstice. And we read a parasha at this time of great light that evokes darkness. And the darkness that the parsha evokes is not the sky darkness of a moonless night. It's the darkness of under the soil, under the stones. It's a darkness we associate with the new life of the seed and with the bones of our ancestors.
Rabbi Jill?
Yeah, we have
Can we get the fans off? Does anybody?
I'm hearing a feedback.
There's feedback.
Everybody.
It's probably the most annoying for you, but I'm just wondering if we can get, if anybody knows how.
Okay, feedback on? Are you guys okay without the fans for a few minutes? Okay. So I was saying, darkness. The darkness of the life of the seed. The story of Korach is quite clear. A Levite named Korach organizes a group of disenchanted Israelites and rises up to threaten Moses' authority. And Korach has a rather compelling argument. He says, all the people are holy, and why therefore do you raise yourself up over them? Of course, Moses could say, I never wanted this job, right? But Korach's claim that all the people are holy is quite compelling. Moses, in response to this claim, accuses Korach of being a demagogue, of deceitfully using the language of holiness to gain power for himself. And the tradition generally goes with Moses' opinion on this and understands Korach as one who argues against Moses in order to set him up in Moses' place. In other words, his words about everyone being holy are not particularly heartfelt. They're the words of the moment that will allow Korach to get the position that he wants. Moses asks for God to make a judgment, to choose between him and Korach. And in order to impress the people with God's power and authority, Moses asks that God makes a wonder that no one has ever seen before. And this is what he asks for. Im Bria Yivrah Hashem, ufatzta adama et piha. If the divine makes a new creation, a new thing, and the earth opens her mouth and swallows them and all that is theirs, and they go down into the underworld alive, then you will know that these people have despised God. Well, that's a rather tall order. Moses tells the people to move away from the tents of Korach, and the earth indeed opens her mouth and swallows Korach and all of his people and all of their tents. There's another place in the Bible where the earth opens her mouth, and that's in Genesis, where the Adamah, the ground, opens her mouth to take Abel's blood after he is murdered, after his brother Cain kills him. So there's a connection here between the earth and the blood, between the Adamah and the Adam. The earth, in the imagination of our ancestors, is the place that receives us in our death. It's the place we come from, where our flesh originally comes from, Adam out of the Adamah, human out of the humus. And it's the place that receives us after we die. So there's a kind of existential horror in this parasha for Korach and his people to go down into the underworld alive. It's like Orpheus and Hades. They're not supposed to be there. It's a boundary violation. Living people don't belong in Sheol. Right? Dead people belong in Sheol. Sheol, the biblical name for the underworld. So to send Korach to Sheol, to the underworld, is to create a bria, a new creation, on the order of the creation of the world. Where exactly does Korach go? So we have to here investigate the word Sheol. Sheol, as I said, is the biblical name for the grave or the underworld. It comes from the root sha'al, which means to ask. We've heard this word several times before we've heard the word Sheol before in the Parsha, when Jacob, in his bereavement, says, I will go down grieving to my son in Sheol. And we're going to hear the word again when the witch of Endor brings the prophet Samuel up from Sheol to talk to King Saul. But this is the only time anybody goes down there alive, and it's the only time we almost get a view of Sheol as the earth opens to swallow Korach. So I said the meaning of Sheol is to ask. Sheol is to ask, inquire, or to divine. And the name implies ancestral wisdom. Ecclesiastes says there's no consciousness in Sheol, but the name, to ask, implies a well of ancestral knowledge from which we can draw. The prophet Isaiah says, you can journey to heaven to get divine wisdom, or you can journey to Sheol to get wisdom there. So, just as I imagine the exile of Miriam into the desert as a journey where she might be able to find wisdom, I'd like to imagine Sheol, into which Korach is swallowed, not as a place where he is erased, but as a place where something new can happen to him, a place where Korach can learn something. You see, I've been doing some walking in Sheol, at least in my head. Over the last number of years, I've been working with my dreams and those of others. And one category of dream that has really moved me is the category of the underworld dream. One of my fellow dreamers shared with me a dream in which, while exploring the ruins of a castle, he slid down a vast slide into the basement and found a stone corridor. And in that stone corridor under the ground, he heard a sound. He put his palms on the wall, on the stone wall, and he felt that he could hear the stones singing. And as he listened, he heard praise and loss in that song. He felt that he was feeling what the ancestors were feeling. And shortly after this, a great bear, who he knows is the soul of his father, appears to him in the dream. So to me, this dream embodies the wisdom of Sheol, which is the breadth and the depth of human feeling and experience, delivered to us via the memory of those we love. The music of the stones is such a powerful expression of the way that all around us holds the impression of everyone who has been here on this planet. In another dream, a dreamer friend of mine finds herself lost and wandering through a crowded, dirty, and confusing city. You've had those, right? I know you have. So, of course, she gets on the wrong bus. And she suddenly finds herself in the countryside. And the bus driver drives the bus through a tunnel under the earth. And while the bus driver's in the tunnel, he begins to sing in a rich, earthy voice. And everyone in the bus joins in. And the sound is an amazing sound. And she said later about the dream, I feel that I'm in the presence of something beautiful and powerful and connected that I don't understand. And she tries hesitantly to join in to this sound. And I think this, again, is the music of the stones. It's the song that comes from under the earth. She said she felt it was a soul bus. In both of these dreams, the dreamer finds a place of connection and beauty and community under the ground. And maybe this beauty and connection is what Korach is meant to find by being sent down there. I've had a couple of these. I remember a dream of exploring an immense labyrinth under Jerusalem with my daughter, Raya. And the labyrinth was connected to everyone's basement. And we could visit all of our friends by popping up in their basements. I remember another dream of exploring tunnels beneath a temple and finding an inner chamber, and I waited there because I knew there was going to be a communication from that place. I feel that our ancestors naming this place Sheol makes so much sense because it implies the possibility of reflecting in that darkness and coming to new knowledge. There's something about the earth that our tradition has perceived about the earth that can open its mouth. The earth is patchat piha. She opens her mouth, right, in this parasha to swallow Korach. But the other place we hear the phrase patchat piha, she opens her mouth, is in the book of Proverbs. Like the Eshet Chayil, the woman of valor, is piha patcha b'chochma. She opens her mouth with wisdom. So in that juxtaposition of text, I can imagine the woman of valor being the earth singing the music of the stones. And I wonder if this is the music that Korach needs to perceive. Because this, after all, is the holiness that he is speaking of. when he says everyone and everything is holy. Maybe what Korach needs is not to abandon that truth, but to see it more deeply. Not so he can turn it to his own ends, but so that he can understand that what he's saying is not something he invented, it's really true. The people really are all holy, and the divine presence is in their midst. And he and Moses and all of us are responsible to that truth. So maybe the underworld journey he takes is not a punishment. Maybe it's medicine for him and for all of us. And maybe we, who so often as a society find it so easy to make unrighteousness invisible to us, who find it so easy to be in denial about our violence to the earth and to one another. Maybe a journey to the roots of things, to the unseen things, and to the ancestors. Maybe such a journey is a very good idea. The Midrash feels very real to me because this Midrash, because Korach's descendants are specifically associated with the music of the stones. In a Midrashic collection called Perkei de Rabbi Eliezer, when Jonah is inside the giant fish, he asks to see the underworld. And it takes him there like a tour bus. You know, he looks through the eyes of the fish, and it takes him to the sea of reeds and the pillars of the earth and a Sheol. And finally, the fish shows him the foundation stone, which is the navel of the earth. And on this stone, the children of Korach are standing and singing hymns. They're acting as Levites under the earth, singing psalms to the glory of the divine. So that's an amazing image of the music of the stones. This reading is falling not only on Shabbat, but on Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, which is the new moon of the month of Tammuz. The names of the Jewish months that we use today, mainly come from Babylonia. And the month of Tammuz is named after Tammuz, Dumuzi, who is a deity. He's a shepherd. And one thing he's famous for in that myth is that due to a decree from his angry wife, Inanna, he is sentenced to time in the underworld. And when the demons of the underworld come to get him and drag him there, he hides and then he fights, but eventually he has to go. And in the end, his sister offers to go in his place, and they share it. So it's like Persephone, half the year in, half the year out. So the name of the month actually implies the need to make this journey cyclically. So the name of the month, too, is an example of the one who journeys through that place and returns to bring us its wisdom. So I can imagine a fresh midrash about Korach in which that arrogant Levite, as our tradition understands him, swallowed by the earth, makes a journey through the underworld and becomes a wiser and humbler priest. And maybe such a wiser and humbler priest could offer a critique and an insight to Moses in his role as national leader without being destructive. I can imagine that in the Midrash, Korach returns from the underworld to bring us wisdom that is not about hate or anger or power or saying the thing that will make people listen to you and obey you, but about the knowledge of our collective life, where we all touch one another. And maybe this is why there are psalms that are attributed to the children of Korach, to remind us about the stones singing, to remind us that the earth can open her mouth, that what we think is silent can speak, and that the deep places can be places for learning what matters. There are 12 psalms attributed to Korach, and in one of them, Psalm 88, the children of Korach sing, "You have put me in the underworld in a deep and dark place." But in Psalm 85, which is another psalm attributed to Korach, they sing differently. They say, "Emet me'eretz titzmach v'tzedek mishamayim nishkaf." Truth sprouts up from the earth, and justice peeps out from heaven. So in this time of crises of leadership and crises of humanity, I hope we can find the wisdom of a humbler and wiser Korach who has heard the music of the stones. And maybe Korach, on his journey back from the deepest place, can bring us a vision of truth and justice. So may the earth open her mouth in wisdom for all of us. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.